got sober and stayed sober for 22 years, and then he fell off the wagon. Then he got sober again. It's Dan's story today, live on Restoring Hope Live. Well, welcome to this edition of RestoringHopeLive.com. We sure appreciate you taking the time to be here today. This program brought to you by the good folks at Powell CDC, part of Unity Point. No matter where you live in this country, go to your website at unitypointhealth.com. You can also go to Powell, Powell, CDC, and talk to those folks. And an amazing recovery program, both inpatient and outpatient, available for you not only at Powell but in other places across the country within the Powell within the Unity Point system. Now, as I recall, I probably shouldn't ask you this. Don't you guys have a really neat mental facility in the Quad Cities? You don't know. Okay.
Don't know.
Lila is the president and CFO of Unity Point, and like most people clear at the top, she doesn't know what goes on at the bottom. She just.
Hey, but I do know that the website you gave was wrong. It's just unitypoint.org.
Oh, unitypoint.org. Well, thank you for telling me. I appreciate that.
See, I do know something.
You know everything, but. All right. My special guest today is a guy I've been wanting to get on the program for some time, and I canceled on him, 2 weeks in a row? I'm sorry. First, I totally messed it up, and then I was ill last week, and so his name is Dan Purcell, and he is 55 years old, and he's got a great story, but it's different than some you'll hear. So many times when we come in and people tell their story, they're not so bold in sharing the details of their, for those of you that aren't in the system, it would be called falling off the wagon. One of the things we like to say within 12-step meetings is we go out for more research, which is a much nicer way of saying we failed and fell off the wagon. But Dan, and we'll get to this part of your story a little later, but that's a huge part of your story.
Yeah.
Is that period of time in which you fell off the wagon, and you're willing to talk about that where most people really aren't.
I think it's an important part. It's an important part of my story. It's an important part of recovery if that's something that has happened to you.
Yeah, and Lila, how many people, quote unquote, fall off the wagon, go out for more research, et cetera, et cetera? Everybody?
No,
No?
not everybody. It kind of scares me that some people say it's just part of recovery. It doesn't have to be. But it is for a lot of people.
Well, I would have told you 2 years ago, I'm 1,507 days sober, so I'm a little over 4 years. And two and a half years ago, I would have told you that I never relapsed, that once I got sober on May 10th, 2010, I never drank again. That's true. But how about the first DUI in 94 that I was required by my government, by my local judiciary council, to go to Powell in outpatient meetings, counseling, and then went to my quote-unquote 12-step meetings to get that signature on the piece of paper and never intended to take it seriously.
Yeah.
I have to count that as a relapse. Then I did it again in 2001, 7 years later, when once again I was given a DUI.
Well, we're told, though, if you never stopped, there isn't anything to relapse from.
Well, but I stopped long enough to go through Powell for 30 days.
Yeah, I see.
Because, the last thing I needed you to do was to take a urine analysis and then send it back to the judge and say, no, he's coming to...
Yeah.
So, with the fear of God, my wife, and the judge, I was okay for, 30 days or 4 weeks or whatever it was. So, Dan, let's go back. Where's home? Where are you from originally? Midwest here?
Yeah. Algona, which is north central Iowa, north of Fort Dodge.
And did you drink during high school?
Yes.
When did you first taste alcohol?
Oh, I was pretty young. I think my relatives during the holidays, they'd pass the Mogan David, so I remember that feeling of getting my little Dixie cup and taking that sip and immediately feeling like I was growing up and
allowed to by the adults.
By the adults, and that's the only alcohol I ever saw. There was no alcohol in my in the home, but during that Christmas for a few years, they would pass around and there'd be a toast. the children included. And
But the other
there was
364 days.
no alcohol in my growing up. There was no.
Any alcoholism in your family?
Yeah, I've got an uncle, and apparently on my dad's side there was drinking out of soup cans, living in a shack, drunks.
okay.
But
Nothing you saw on a
But nothing
day-to-day
I saw.
basis like that.
Yep.
All right. So you when did you start drinking on your own outside of Christmas with Mogan David?
Well, I think probably the first time I felt the effect of anything is, I grew up in a deaf family. My mother and father were both born deaf, and so there was a lot of confusion. I was the firstborn, and so a lot of times I didn't quite get it. Alcohol seemed like one of those grown-up things that I wanted from the get-go because I wanted to be grown up. I didn't want to be in the life that I had, and one of the things that I was told is you don't smell gas. But being deaf parents, they never explained why.
Hold on. You don't smell gas.
You don't sniff gas. You don't. And again, being in a deaf family, I couldn't ask like any child would ask, why?
Yeah.
Why can't I? And I liked the smell of gas.
Okay.
So I was told I couldn't.
So you did.
I did, and I started. I like that smell, and then I ended up getting high from the gas. I was probably 7 years old or something, and I remember very well. I remember that feeling of ease and comfort that came from that. I remember laying out in the lawn and looking at the clouds and seeing cartoon characters, and I loved that feeling immediately. It gave me something that I didn't know how to get living, and but it was one of those things that shortly into that I did it for a period of time, and I was in the garage and I was smelling the gas, and my dad comes in, and deaf people have vocal cords, and he screams very loudly, and time stood still. Now, being an alcoholic, time stands still when I'm having to try to figure what my next line is going to be, and the committee in my head comes up with, okay, he didn't say you couldn't drink it. So I said, I was drinking it, and he ran out of the garage. I thought, well, that worked out well. But then he came back with the keys, threw me in the car, and off we went to the hospital, and I had my stomach pumped for no good reason other than for the lie. So I didn't smell gas.
Boy,
anymore.
did you pay for that lie?
I
huh?
didn't smell gas anymore, but.
Did they figure out that you hadn't?
No, and maybe they did. I mean,
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of things adults didn't tell me much,
Yeah.
and my parents couldn't tell me much, and so consequently, I didn't do that. But I remember very well that thought. I mean, there was something out there that made me feel better, and I didn't know that was going to be alcohol. I didn't even know alcohol could do that, But I just knew that there was something.
Were
that I
you
felt better.
wanting a release from the way you were living, or having to live with parents that were different from
I
other
would
parents?
suspect. I mean, I
Yeah.
would suspect, but being a child, that wasn't
Yeah.
my conscious thought.
Yeah.
But I know I yearned for something different. I knew things weren't normal
Yeah.
there, but it was it was the most normal thing I had.
How old
obviously.
were you then that you had your stomach pumped?
It was in the single digits, maybe
Yeah.
8 or 9.
Yeah.
Did you get bullied or picked on in school?
It's a good question. I am the king of camouflage, and I am very good at fitting into just about any situation. I was convinced that was going to happen. I was consciously on guard. I was very good at self deprecation, when needed.
Yeah.
I could make up things very quickly to keep. So consequently, no, I didn't get a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't get picked on. I never hung around with the people I wanted to, but on the other hand, I never felt as though I was one of those kids get picked on. And I allied with them too, the kids that get picked on, because I figured they were going to eventually be my friends.
Yeah.
But that never was the case.
Dan Purcell is our guest today, 55 years old, an incredible story as we learn about not only what eventually brings an addict to the addictions that they have, whether it be sniffing gas or smoking dope or drinking alcohol, But most importantly, the part of Dan's story, which we'll get to later, is about his relapse because he feels that's an important part of that story. So tell me about until you're 18. What does the consumption of alcohol or other drugs look like?
Well, alcohol came into being, and at the first taste of alcohol I had was a big disappointment. I thought it was going to be Super Pepsi or some wonderful, wonderful thing that adults consume. So when I had that, it didn't make any sense, and it was horrible tasting. And
Yeah.
again, not having anybody to really question. I wanted to be cool, so the people I was with. So, that first was a warm Falstaff that had been in, July, hidden in the woods for us. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
And so it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But then the next time I drank it was Mogan David again, coincidentally. We called it Mad Dog 2020. And I drank that. It went down easy. And I felt that feeling again, that same feeling that I felt from smelling the gas, which I found out later it does the same thing to the brain. It's ethyl alcohol, and so I immediately had that ease and comfort for about 10 minutes, and then I started vomiting and crawling through, just like I think a lot of our stories are. It was, so the next day, that horrible hangover quickly moved into I wanted this again, and so my story goes on through high school. I drank a lot. I did every single substance that was available to me, anywhere from pills to smoking to needles to whatever I could. I wasn't of any mind that I was going to say.
So whatever you could get addicted to, Dan Purcell would get addicted to it. This is a great story. We'll continue. So you said needles. You said everything goes.
Yeah, everything goes. I went through that little phase where I had this list that I wasn't going to do, but then I would, when presented, I would do it. And so then I wore it as a badge of honor. I'd say, well, I'm not going to say no. I'm going to, and you won't say no either, because the crowd I hung around with didn't say no, so we took whatever we could. So obviously my high school suffered, my family life suffered. I was the oldest. Of 5.
Oh, wow.
And there was 3 of us that were close in age. So my sister followed in my footsteps and was used a lot. And my brother, he tried his best, to kind of stay away. And mom and dad, kind of gave up on us and shifted their attention over to my brother, and sent him away, actually.
Oh,
sent
really?
him away to live with an aunt because things had gotten so out of control.
Are all 5 of you hearing?
Yes, and it is unusual to have deaf children from deaf parents.
Okay.
It's more often than not you can hear. Apparently, I'm a CODA, a child of deaf adults, and we are a screwed up lot. Growing up.
Really?
Yeah, it's growing
So
up.
from a psychological standpoint, that community would look at you as a child of deaf parents and say, highly likely there's going to be some emotional issues.
Well, yeah, there was major communication. Mother, at an early age, decided that it would be too difficult for us to learn formal sign language, thinking that multiple languages would have been too difficult. So we consequently had what was called home signs. It was a made-up language, all based on need. So I didn't have a clue what those people were talking about most of the time.
Those people meaning your
My mom and dad. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No idea. Wow. I mean, I knew when they were mad.
Yeah. But that was tone and facial expressions.
And volume. They had vocal cords. So it was a lot of made up story. My life was, it was like, let's see, hot water. Well, there's 2 water towers now going us. So the one water tower's hot. The other one's cold, and that's what I told my brother and sister, and that's what they believed, because I'm the one that made up our reality, so.
You made up your reality.
Well, yeah, and they
you
just,
had
I
to.
was the oldest, yeah.
Yeah.
So, because we couldn't ask why.
Yeah.
We couldn't ask, what's that? Why? Any 3-year-old, why?
Yeah.
Well, that's how they learn. They say, well, what's that? Well, that's the hot water heater. Well, I couldn't ask that question, so that was just something in the basement I had no idea what it was.
Dan Purcell is our guest. His story's amazing, and there's something in it I want you to hear. That's coming up next. Keep listening.
School. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. We're back on RestoringHopeLive.com. We sure appreciate you being here. Make sure that you head to our website. It's not a big fancy website. We don't monetize it, which means you don't have a bunch of ads flying in and out. But it's where you'll find all of our shows. And I would encourage you to go through and listen to some of those shows. And you can also watch them. I know you're probably listening on XM Sirius today or the American Family Radio Network. But when we're webcasting at webcastonelive.com, we have cameras. Not because we think we're TV, because we're not. But it's because we try to be as transparent as we possibly can, so that you can genuinely see and hear the stories that I think God wants you to hear. I think there's something within Dan Purcell's story that you're supposed to hear. And Dan doesn't know what it is. I don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. But God does. And so he's put you here, whether it's on a podcast or live. We sure appreciate you taking the time to be here on RestoringHopeLive.com. All right, so Dan, you run through high school using everything, every needle, every drink, every drop, every smoke. At what point do you decide you've had enough and it's time to get sober?
Well, when I finally got a girlfriend, and I struggled with women through high school. Alcohol and drugs were more important, and not saying I didn't want a relationship, but I was clueless and I was frightened. And the first girl that actually called me back, being as immature as I was, you got to marry her. I mean, right. I really didn't know any better. And, so she was a nice enough gal, and she comes home one day very concerned, says, my father, he's going to treatment and like, he's got cancer or you know, it's like, no, for alcoholism. It's like, I've never seen him drink. Well, every cup of coffee he has got Kahlua in it, and you know, and so he, you know, and so off he goes to a treatment center, and so I go visit him, and you know, I smoke a few bowls and get over there, and I'm smiling, and I'm thinking, this is nice. You know, when I'm 40, you know, and at this time I'm, you know, in my early 20s, and I'm thinking, I think maybe eventually I'll do that. And one day, my
go to the
my
Betty Ford
fiance,
vacation
yeah,
clinic.
my fiance says, well, you've got a drinking problem.
Oh.
And I knew I had a drinking problem.
All right, so it wasn't just heightened because of Dad.
Yeah,
Okay.
and, you know, and I had already really cut back on drugs. I wasn't, you know, I was still smoking pot every day, but I wasn't doing the other things. And so I went to a meeting, and I remember, you know, it's in a basement, you know, with a bunch of old guys.
Were they smoking cigarettes back
Smoking
then?
cigarettes,
Yeah.
eating cookies, and speaking in a language I didn't get, saying a prayer that I didn't like, and so I went for a little bit, and I quit going, and then one day I got to go see a nun. I'm gonna go talk to Sister Robitel was her name.
Why?
Well, I didn't know at the time, but she's doing an intervention. This is what she did.
Were you married yet?
No.
Okay.
So I go off to see her in a parking lot at Winnebago in Forest City, and they actually their facility, their outpatient treatment's named after her, and she very quickly tells me that I have a problem. And I had an article in my wallet, Reader Digest, that says smoking pot helps glaucoma, and I said, you see, I'm not wearing glasses, and she ripped that up, and next thing I know, I'm at the treatment center, and
Who sent her?
nobody sent her. I thought they were going to do, they were going to work a little bit of religion on me, and ended up it was an intervention.
But how did she know that you had addiction issues?
Well, because it was an intervention, I didn't know it was. She was actually, that's what she did, was CB.
Was she from your church? I mean,
No,
how?
she was in Forest City where the treatment center was, and
Who
this
called her and said that you had a problem?
my fiance.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and so we did that, and she was a larger than life. She did many interventions, and so I went to the treatment center. It was a 6-week program. I don't remember a lot other than I know, you know, an ounce of whiskey, 6 ounces of wine, and 12 ounces of beer are the same thing.
Yeah.
And I remember more importantly was the family week. And I remember one particular gentleman, and he had all his kids, 6 kids there. One was missing. And I remember very well the oldest child, I don't like you. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Mom. You know, you were totally unavailable, and da-da-da-da-da. And then we went down through the line, and we got to the youngest, and I remember very well the tears as the little one was just saying, Dad, I just want you to come home. You know, I'm tired of this. You know, I you know, when are you coming home? You know, and I saw the effects to the family, and I'm still clueless. I don't really know if I am an alcoholic or have, you know, in the sense that I need to do this for life, but I come out and I go to meetings. God immediately lifted the obsession. I no longer desired to drink. You know, I went to that 12-step fellowship that I went to that first time, and I then went for the next 24 years. You know, I went there, and then I helped start another 12-step fellowship that was more, you know, that first step was more geared towards addicts. And I was very involved in that fellowship. I started a lot of meetings. I represented Iowa at the world level. I did a lot, you know, and really everything I did for those years was revolved around recovery. I went to
Did your friends change too? Were they from recovery?
all different. Everybody was in recovery.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have that circle anymore. I married Heidi.
Okay.
My first wife. We had a child. We were only together for short time. You know, I didn't have a clue. You know, I mean, you know, we got married in order for my insurance to pay for her to go to treatment. It was under the label of codependency, but she went to treatment, and I remember it was family week for her. I called in sick the second day. I didn't want to go. I just just because I'm not drinking doesn't mean I'm better, And I remember my counselor called. He was so angry. Get up here. So on the way up, I'm thinking they're going to know that I wasn't sick. So I was trying to quit smoking cigarettes, so I had pipe tobacco, and so I ate half this bag of.
So you could be sick.
So I could be. I was sick. When I got there, I was sick.
For those of you listening on the American Family Radio Network, the second half of Dan's story, which is extremely important, will be next week, right here, 7 to 7:30 Eastern Time, as the Tamara Scott Show is coming up next here on RestoringHopeLive.com. All right, so you're sick now at the intervention or at the family thing?
At the family, yeah. So we got through that. We got married on Friday, and she went to the treatment center on Sunday.
As a codependent.
As a codependent, but it was the exact same program at that time in 1980. This was 1980 October, and so it was the exact same program. So. So I get out, I do those things, we get divorced, I have a son, I end up married a gal that was in recovery. I laid hostage to her. I didn't know how to date. I didn't know the first thing about.
So you and Heidi had a son, and then you divorce.
Yep.
And now you're stalking.
Stalking's a strong
Oh,
word.
okay. Yeah. Well, you said lay and hiding.
Yeah, it was. I just wanted to be with her.
Okay.
And I wasn't. So I convinced her that it was a good plan to marry me, and so we were Mr. and Mrs. Recovery, and we did our thing. She had 3 children, and they were a little on the wild side, and so we had the 4 kids. I'd get Zach every weekend, and we everything we did was in recovery. And but I still didn't know how to live.
Right.
The 12 steps. I knew what they were. We studied them, but I never really had a sponsor.
Okay.
I never really applied them. So, I'm still this very don't know what's going on. So she's struggling about being in the relationship. 9 years. I've been sober 9 years, and I'm dying. She wants to leave. I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And so off I go to codependency treatment.
Okay.
And it's a brand new thing they've got, and I don't know how to live. The bugaboos of me growing up in a deaf family, I don't know. I don't have living skills, and I'm not applying the principles. So the one thing I will say that came out of that is I started feeling a little better about Dan.
Okay,
I could maybe somehow survive without Barb, and we try again, and she ends up leaving me for good for another guy in 1995. So I'm 15 years into this, and I'm dying. I don't.
Are you working a program at all?
I'm going to meetings. Let's just say I'm going to meetings,
but that isn't working
but
a
I'm not.
program.
I'm in Algona.
Yeah.
I am the old timer from the get-go.
Yeah, and Algona is a town of what, 1,500?
5,500.
5,500.
5,500. I'm in a fellowship. It's not the fellowship I started in. So I'm immediately the old timer, and it was basically a lot of almost aftercare. We weren't really using the steps as much. We were given feedback. We had marathon meetings, and nothing was really changing, but everybody was staying sober. That's one thing I will say. We weren't using, and we were doing the, I wouldn't say we're doing the next right thing, but so it's 95. I'm divorced. And I end up having a spiritual awakening. There was the church that I had been going to, that was our church. That was Barb and I's church, and I didn't want to go there. And so then a good friend of mine introduced me to spirituality, and I really just blossomed at that time spiritually. Still not working the steps.
Now, when you say spiritually, you mean a relationship with God.
A relationship with God.
Is it
a personal relationship with God?
All right, and is Christ a part of that? Is the Trinity a part of that?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
But I am doing the best I had ever done in my life.
Yeah.
In the sense of that relationship. So I end up going through those years, and I had a number of short relationships. And I finally just like, that's where my problem, because I still wasn't feeling totally whole. And so ended up, I went to a single stance, because I'm thinking, what's wrong? It's these ladies in recovery. That's what's wrong.
You need to find a lady that's not in recovery.
I got to find somebody not in recovery. So I went to a single stance.
And you're 35 at this point?
Oh, it would have been. This would have been probably in 98 now. So
Okay, so almost 40.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Almost 40. And so I find her, and she's a teacher. She's a pretty gal, and it was a big deal. And she thought my spirituality was kind of cool for a while, and she thought my recovery was kind of cool for a while. But pretty soon, it's like those things that I had always done, she didn't want to do. She didn't want to go to my convention, my recovery convention I had been to for 20 years in a row. I was one of only 3 people that had been to that convention for 20 years. She talked me into going on vacation instead. Yeah. And I had never been in my entire adult life on a vacation.
Whoa.
So we went on vacation. I loved the vacation.
Where'd you go?
Colorado.
Okay.
And never been out west. So
And you're not drinking, you're not using.
I'm not drinking. I'm still going to meetings.
Okay.
But now I broke that. I had worked in a factory in Algona for 24 years. I finally followed through, and I left that job, got a different job. That was a big deal. And then probably more importantly, I then left Algona in 2004, and I moved to Des Moines, where I currently live.
Dan Purcell is our guest, and you'd think at this point, 20-some years sober, happy wife, happy life, things are going spectacular. When we come back, things are not so spectacular. And probably the coolest thing about Dan is he's going to share that fall from grace, that going out for more research here on RestoringHopeLive.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Yeah.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Welcome back to RestoringHopeLive.com here on XM Sirius and the American Family Radio Network. We're talking with a neat guy today, Dan Purcell. 55 years old and happily married, but wasn't so the case 15 years ago. You were happily married. You had moved to a bigger city and was pursuing some career things for a while, but you were kind of slacking off on the 12-step programs.
Yep. It's Sean and I got married. My third wife. We've been married since 2000.
Good.
And we were going through. She basically, recovery was nice, but she wanted me to do other things too. And I just started going to less and less meetings. I wasn't going to the conventions. I wasn't going to this. I wasn't going to that. And being in a factory those years, I had started taking some pain meds. I was taking them the way I was supposed to begin with, and then I was starting to take them on the weekends to make the weekends nicer.
Sure.
So when I moved, that third thing, I ended up, didn't go to that convention. I ended up quitting a job at 24 years, started a new career, and then I moved to Des Moines. So I left Algona, that I had been there for 45 years. I then, when I got here, I immediately saw myself as retired from 12 Steps. I saw myself as a man now that was on a spiritual mission,
Okay.
and that really the 12 Steps were meant to take me to that conscious contact.
Okay.
And so I got here, and it didn't take very long, as you can imagine. And if there's any point to that relapse, is to know that I have alcoholism, and you take away the solution, and that is the 12 steps, I am in trouble. I am in big trouble. And I was in big trouble. I got out, my brain started telling me, you know what? Maybe you overreacted.
Wow.
24 years, you were so young. What about so-and-so and so-and-so that, they were just as crazy as you were at 20, and now they've got children and they're drinking normally, and everybody thinks you're such a good guy. Why don't we just give it a shot? And the biggest lie that I told myself was, if this doesn't work out, I'll just come back. I'll just come back to the fellowship.
Yeah, you just start coming to meetings again.
Absolutely, not a big deal.
Put the plug in the jug. Not a big
it was
deal.
not going to be a big deal.
Right.
So I proceeded to drink like normal people, except that I didn't tell my wife that I was drinking. I didn't tell my coworkers that I wasn't drinking. I didn't tell anybody. It was a secret. So I was drinking, sneaking, and doing those things. So I did that. But that first time I drank again, it was drunk. And that's how I drank. I went right back to drunk. But there was no, this didn't work out. It's on. I wanted more, and that's what I did. But I knew that voice inside wasn't gone, and the voice said, "This isn't going to work out. I'll be here for you when that time comes." And
was that your spirituality? Do you
yeah,
think?
that'd be my spirituality. That'd be God. As I would choose. So then in 2005,
Okay.
September of 2005, it's Labor Day weekend. My son was in town, and he had a bachelor's party, and he had they had their great time, and he didn't know I was drinking, and he was really proud of his dad. He had seen me speak so many times, and he just, and him and I, we'd have these discussions about God, and he was my pride and joy. He was my only biological son, and that weekend, he went home and to his fiance, and ended up, she had to go to the hospital for a back injury. And he complained to the emergency room that his heart felt a little funny. Not heart, but he's a little fluttery. And ended up, they told him, go home, and if you have any issues, give us a call in the morning. Well, I ended up getting a call from the police in Iowa City, and Zach was in the hospital. And
How old was he?
Zach was 23, and then they told me to hurry and get to Iowa City. So we got in the car, and I'm driving, and I'm trying to find, this this is pre-internet on the phone, you know, and I'm trying to figure the number. I finally found the number for the Iowa City Hospital. I call, they put the doctor, and the doctor says, he says, I don't like to tell you this over the phone, but your son has died.
Oh.
You know, he's, and so my wife screams and she wants me to pull over, you know, and at that time the voice in my head says, this is the only thing I have control of is this car, you know, and so we rushed to Iowa City, and I get there, and Zach has passed, and the voices are screaming in my head, you know, the one voice is screaming, you need a drink, and the other voice saying you need to stop drinking, you know, and there was that, you know, and so that week that we buried Zach, I didn't drink that week. That was the longest I went during that period, and then I proceeded to go insane. My alcoholism took way off. My wife found out I was drinking, and like a lot of normal people, she thought, well, that's okay. I guess I had a drink too, you know, if something like that would have happened. But she very quickly saw that things weren't going good, and my behavior started to go very badly in 2006, 2007. I started doing drugs again. I started sneaking out when she'd go to bed. I'd be out all night, and I remember being in very bad situations, and I'd hear noises, and I would just pray, God, hopefully somebody's got a gun and they're going to shoot me, and shoot me in the head and be done. I want to die, you know, or please, God, be the police and arrest me and put me in jail, because I don't want to live this way anymore. But I didn't want to stop. You know, I didn't want to tell my wife. And finally, in, I think 2008, I'm in a parking lot at Powell. And I had been on a binge. You know, my wife, I wouldn't answer the phone. And I finally admit to her what I'm doing.
That's Dan Purcell's story. What happens next? It's amazing. Stick around. We're live here on RestoringHopeLive.com at WebcastOneLive.com. So, you go into Powell?
No. I go in, and I didn't qualify for inpatient. I didn't want to do outpatient. I know what to do, for God's sakes. I'm Mr. Recovery. And I tell my wife, well, I don't want to do outpatient. Let me just go back to meetings. So I went back to meetings. Everybody was just thrilled to see me. In fact, most didn't even know I had been using. They just, so I sat in my seat, you know, and I started speaking, you know, like I had always spoke, but I didn't get a sponsor, and I didn't work the steps.
And did you admit to
my relapse? Yes.
Okay.
You know,
right.
I mean, and you know, and so then I relapsed after relapse. That first year, from 2008 to 2009, I relapsed 5 times.
Wow.
And I was scared. I mean, I was scared.
Which means you really never got sober.
Never got. Yeah, I didn't.
White knuckled it from hard place to hard place.
Yeah. I went to meetings, but I just simply didn't. I did what I had done before, and it didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and as they talk about the progression of this thing, you know, I didn't know what I knew when we spoke of progression. You know that, you know, your alcoholism is doing push-ups, you know, in the parking lot. You know, but I didn't really get that until I tried to get sober again. And then it was like, it was the obsession. It's all it was in my mind. The obsession crowded out any other thought. And, you know, when that, all of a sudden I'd pull in and I'd have a shot. And then before you know it, I'd be doing drugs again. And so this proceeded on until, out of absolute, utter desperation, you know, I came back to the fellowship that I started with. At that time, 28 years before that. And I came in, and I just like, I'll do whatever. I will do whatever you say to do, you know, and I got a sponsor for the first time, you know, that I can truly say I got a sponsor. I said, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this. I've never sponsored anybody, you know, and so he took me through the steps, you know. He showed me how to do these things, you know. He showed me how to apply these steps, you know, and more importantly, showed me, you know, God, you know, and I had spoke earlier about, you know, finding that spirituality, and I pulled that separate. I pulled that separate from the 12 steps. I always thought the 12 steps were steps to God, and not, and now I know today, that the 12 steps are part of God.
Yeah. It's the rest of the story, what his life is like now, coming up on RestoringHopeLive.com.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Hey, what's wrong? Logan wants Let's Rock Elmo for his birthday, but since Steve lost his job, I don't think we can afford it. What did you do for money last year when you and John were struggling to make ends meet?
My secret? I went to Me and Mommy to Be. We sold all of Megan and Ryan's clothes and toys there. They give back the highest percentage on their items in the area, and it was so easy.
Megan's clothes? She's 15.
Yes, they can sign newborn through trendy teens. We're not struggling now, but I'm gonna keep saving and making money at Me and Mommy to Be.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
We are back here at RestoringHopeLive.com. Our guest is Dan Purcell, and we are now 14 years ago. Is that fair to say?
No, only 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep.
And you're still married to a wonderful wife.
Yes.
Who, obviously, you kind of like me, you married up.
I'm a lucky man.
Yeah.
I'm a very lucky man.
I never asked you, did Jim marry up or did you marry up?
Jim married up.
Okay, well, I probably shouldn't needed to ask that because I just thought I would. All right, and so, but you're in the depths of a terrible alcoholism, and worse than ever.
Yep, worse than, and again, to reiterate, continuous sobriety is the point. You said it's important to know that relapse is not part of this. I don't want to glorify this part of it. Continuous, that's what we strive for, and that's who the people we respect in the fellowships are, those that put together an amount of time.
Well, for just the reason you said, it got so bad, you don't know if you can make it back.
Yeah.
And I've heard that from so many people that have gone back out, and it's so scary.
So what finally brought you back?
2 reasons. One, I wanted to die. I literally wanted to die. And
when you were drinking or when you weren't drinking, or both?
Both.
Okay.
I am a coward, and I am an easy way out kind of guy. I would not live under a bridge. I would never go that far down. Mm-hmm. I would check out, and that I had thought about that a number of times during that time. And I loved my wife, and I loved those grandkids, and and I wanted to get sober. It's not like I came back, and with the intent of using again. But I didn't know how not to use, and so I had to relearn every bit of this through a different basic text, a different book. Guided by somebody, that's got 35
Finally
years.
A sponsor.
Finally a
the
sponsor.
big book.
Yep. And this is the guy, so I'm doing this thing, and he's guiding me through. We're meeting regularly. I'm attending. I went to 90 and 90. They talk about that.
Yep.
So I did that. I went to meetings. You know, I had done 4 steps. My first 4th step was in treatment in 1980, and I copied my roommates, but changed the details.
Have you ever seen that before, Lila? Yeah.
You know, and it's like, and I didn't see the point. There was so much to this.
Yeah.
I was feeling okay, so why push it? Why work that hard? Now, out of utter desperation, I'm willing to do the way they laid this thing out. I don't want to relapse anymore, you know. And I heard a speaker say that his intent was to never drink again. And I always thought it was just one day at a time, and that I heard it said, I don't know what I might do tomorrow, but today I'm not going to drink. Well, he said, I'm never going to drink again based on a daily reprieve.
Okay.
You know, it's based on a spiritual life.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I have known, and, you know, I had never thought I could say that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought I'd be pushing fate, you know. So here it is. I started doing that thing. I started going to church. I started building that relationship, you know, and, but more importantly, I showed up. More importantly, my mantra became do the next right thing. Because, you know, there's that voice every one of us have.
Yep.
And most of the time, it was just lazy why I wouldn't do the next right thing, because that required effort on my part. I learned what action is. I learned that willingness without action is just fantasy, you know, and I spent a lot of time in fantasy. There's a lot of things I wanted to do.
I just gave that lecture to a girl today.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because and we kind of spiral down if we're not taking action.
Yep. And I think we become inert. And you know, it's kind of like I was watching a bird on the bicycle trail, and it was a golden, what is our state bird?
Finch.
A gold finch, and it was like every time it flapped its wings, it went up, and then started coasting down, up and down.
Yep.
And that's what my life's been if I don't take action. You know?
So you've been sober how long?
It will be 3 years in September, so over 2.5 years.
Congratulations.
You know, and
Do you struggle with it every day?
the obsession has been lifted. The desire has not, and I wish I could say that has totally went away, but I don't know if that's part of the progression. That first 24 years, the thought of drinking rarely crossed my mind.
Yeah.
You know, the thought of drinking now crosses my mind occasionally.
I found that the thought of drinking crosses my mind, but now it's to celebrate, not to be depressed. Or when something bad happens, I know that's absolutely not the alternative.
Yeah.
Something wonderful happens, I think, oh, you know, just a couple of martinis.
This will enhance it.
Yeah, I deserve it.
Yeah,
I deserve
absolutely.
it.
Yeah. You know, so this has not been as easy. I've worked a lot harder this time around.
But I would say you're really working the program now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am in a study group right now, and I'm studying.
Yeah.
I'm listening to audio, and I'm writing, and I'm doing things that, you know, that I probably hadn't ever done. Well, I hadn't ever done before. You know, I'm sponsoring men. You know, I'm sponsoring 2 deaf men.
And you have grandbabies now,
Yep.
and that has made a big difference in your life.
You know, it's the greatest thing in the world is to be a grandparent.
Yes,
you
I
know,
agree.
and,
You're about to find out in what, 90 days?
Yeah, it is.
Well, and you said something off mic that I want you to share on mic, and that was that, you know, I never thought I'd feel for a grandchild the way I did my own biological children, unless that child came from a biological children. And the 3 biggest souls in my life are my 3 grandchildren who come from my wife's daughter.
Yep.
Now, I've been her dad since she was 9, but I remember holding Alex, and he's 16 now. And I remember holding him, and just these emotions just came roaring out of me, and I'm thinking, I'm not supposed to feel this. You know, this isn't how I'm supposed to feel, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think it's important you know, when I had the 3 stepkids in my second marriage, they didn't particularly like me because I ended up having to bring discipline and order.
Yeah.
So my son, you know, he loved me, you know, and so I kept thinking this was natural. You know, this is a biological effect that nature intended for me to feel differently about a biological child. So when my wife had her first grandchild, she loved that child, and she scooped her up, and off they went, and I never really hardly saw them for that first few years. And So I never built that bond. So I thought, again, that was biological.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to get it after Zach passed. Well, my second granddaughter, they lived just down the street, so we had her all the time. And she loved Grandpa, and I loved her. I learned that love is a reciprocal thing. I can love somebody, but it's a little different if they don't love you back.
Yeah.
And I've learned, I adore those grandkids.
How old is the middle one now?
My middle one, she's 8.
Okay,
and,
cool.
And then I've got a new 9-month-old, and he's every bit a boy. And
Do you feel like him, maybe like you did with Zach?
yeah, and yeah, it's yeah, because he's a loud, colicky, cranky baby. So I can really relate to that.
Well, we look forward to celebrating 4 years with you here in a couple months.
3 years.
3 years with you in a couple months. We sure appreciate you coming by and sharing your story. And if you want to reach out to Dan, you can do so by simply going to our website at restoringhopelive.com. Click on contact and just put in the origin or the memo sign for Dan. And I'm J. Michael McCoy. We'll see you next week live here on restoringhopelive.com.
Very good.
Yeah.